Hey, what's up? Hello, everyone. Welcome into Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name is Matt.
My name is Dyl. You already know what time it is. Draft time. We are back for another draft, and this week we are drafting Part 3s, Volume 3s, Threequels, any movie that is the third installment in a franchise. This cannot be like the third Marvel movie, but this could be like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Before we dive into our draft though, make sure to comment what you would take number 1 overall. Drop a like, drop a dislike, it helps the channel out, but maybe drop a like, it would make me smile. I lost last week. Matt, you have the first overall pick.
First overall pick is so obvious. We are doing best threequels of all time. These are the GOAT third movies, and I got one right here. Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. This is my third time drafting this movie. This one is the number 1 head honcho, big boy threequel of all time. Not only is it one of the greatest movies of all time, but it is one of only 2 sequels to win Best Picture at the Oscars.
You saved me, because I probably wouldn't have taken this because I haven't seen it yet. So at least I don't have to pass upon it and possibly give you a free gimme later in the draft. But from everything I've heard, this is a great first overall pick.
We are going to one day do a series where you watch Lord of the Rings for the first goddamn time and react to it honestly.
I am sure it will eventually happen. I am kind of holding out for this movie to come back in theaters, which I know it does very often, but I need to wait for the first one to come back in theaters and then watch the second one and then the third one. But for my first overall pick here, this would be the movie I would take at number 1 overall because I haven't seen Return of the King, and that would be Return of the Jedi. This is technically a part 3 in its little installment. Yes, it's technically episode 6, but it was the original part 3.
Makes sense. I mean, it is part of the trilogy. I am not a fan of Return of the Jedi.
That is completely okay. While this is not my favorite part 3 here on the list, I feel like it is the most beloved on the list. So there's some I prefer a little bit more. I think this one still is a solid movie. While it's probably the weakest of the original trilogy, I think it's still better than the 6 movies that have come out after it.
See, I would say it's not even the best part 3 in any of the 3 series that we've gotten in Star Wars. That's my hot take.
Well,
I hate the prequels, but I think that the last one there is actually surprisingly good. Roger Ebert agrees with me.
Toy Story 3. I think that is the best of the Toy Story saga so far. What I love about the Toy Story movies is how they are growing with their audience. While they know what their target demographic is, Toy Story 1 was made primarily for kids at that time. Toy Story 2 grows in that story for when those kids are a little bit older, and now Toy Story 3 hits those kids who are now growing up to become an adult, because I was one of those target demographic kids. This proves why animation should be considered for bigger Oscar awards. Animation does not get the love that it deserves above the line. But Matt, you have the next 2 picks here. What are you taking?
My next pick that I gotta take is Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban.
Darn.
This one is, I would say, the best film in the Harry Potter series. Alfonso Cuarón came in, he took what Chris Columbus had done as a purely kids movie, a kids adventure, and he turned it into something a little bit darker, a little bit more interesting. Honestly, he revitalized the entire story, and I'd say he revitalized the entire young adult genre. Kids were willing to see something a little bit darker. You didn't need to give them something completely light and frivolous. You could give them something a little bit challenging. While Prisoner of Azkaban, I think, is the weakest book in the series, it is by far the best movie. It is a reinvention of everything that came before. The next one I'm gonna pick is Skyfall. This is the 3rd Daniel Craig Bond movie, so it does count. It might be like the 20th Bond movie overall. Skyfall is just an incredible film. It's a great action movie with a great villain. We have a lot of Daniel Craig's character of Bond growing through this movie, returning home, going back to his roots. We have the best performance in the entire Bond series coming from Judi Dench here, who should have been nominated.
Well, I'm very upset because you took 2 movies I very much wanted to have on my roster. So
I did that strategically.
So I'm going to have to take a big swing with this next pick to hopefully catch up in the draft. And while this is not an official trilogy, I think there's a case to be made for the Dollars trilogy, because you have A Fistful of Dollars, you have
I failed strategically.
There we go. So I'm taking it the good, the bad, and the ugly. Originally, I was thinking this wouldn't really be eligible because it's a little bit of a reach, but it still fits. So I was not looking at it originally, but once my probably number 2, number 3 overall picks went, I was like, okay, now I have to go for this. And I think this is a very great movie. I don't think many people can disagree about that, and I'm just very glad that I have it here on my roster. To pair with that, though, I'm taking a movie that may not be as beloved as another movie in this series. It's a very well-made movie, and that is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I see you're laughing. Okay, cool. I think this is one of the most fun Indiana Jones movies. While is it the best made one? Is it better than Raiders? No, but I have more fun watching this movie than I do when I watch Raiders. This was a very fitting and a great conclusion to a trilogy, and if they never continued with the series, it would have been perfectly okay because it ends on such a high and such a positive note, which, I mean, a lot of these movies that we have drafted so far don't really end on such a high and positive note.
All right, for my next pick here, I am going to take Before Midnight. This film follows Jesse and Celine, who met in 1995 on a train heading to Vienna, and then 9 years later, they've reconnected in Paris. And Before Midnight takes place 9 years after that, as they are now married and having marital problems as they vacation together in Greece with their family. It is a great conclusion to this series, to this love affair that we've watched over 18 years. Yeah, 18 years over this series. So now for this last pick, I'm really torn. I don't know whether to pick something artsy or whether to pick something a little bit more populist that the people will love. I won't pick Three Colors Red, which is the final film in the Three Colors trilogy. So instead, I am going to go with Thor Ragnarok. It took a character that no one cared about, turned Thor from this overly serious Shakespearean character that no one really liked into this lovable goofball. Taika Waititi came in to this series and brought in this sort of synth pop feeling to it all, giving us this sort of 80s vibe that I think was absolutely spectacular. This has one of the best scripts in any Marvel movie. It has a great villain. It is one of the most fun Marvel movies that has been out there, and I think people might unfairly look back at Thor Ragnarok after seeing Thor Love and Thunder, which was not very good, but did a lot of the same things. Thor Ragnarok is still the real deal, even though Love and Thunder followed it up with not a great film.
Some honorable mentions I'm going to give before I take my 5th and final selection. We have The Dark Knight Rises, which I see is right there behind you. We have Kung Fu Panda 3, which I think is a great animated Part 3, but I already have one of those, so I don't need another one. We have another Marvel Part 3, Captain America Civil War, but I'm going to go with what I think is the best Marvel Part 3, and that is Avengers Infinity War, which I would say is the best Marvel movie there is. So I think, at least for me, that kind of trumps your Ragnarok pick. But, you know, Ragnarok is still a great Part 3. I think Infinity War adds what we all wanted from a cinematic universe. It is the ultimate culmination of all of these heroes coming together to face off against the ultimate big bad.
I'm going to be real. I think you've won this draft already. I didn't take Infinity War because I don't really like Infinity War. So on my team, I've got The Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Skyfall, Before Midnight, and Thor Ragnarok.
And on Team Dyl, we have Star Wars Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, Toy Story 3, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and Avengers Infinity War. Make sure to go over to the YouTube community tab. We have a poll open there, and as always, the winner of the poll gets to have the first overall pick next week. Drop a comment down below. Let us know what you would take as the first overall pick in this draft. Would you agree with Matt and go with Lord of the Rings, or would you go with something a little bit different? But until next time, my name is Dyl.
And my name is Matt, and this has been Fantasy Filmball.